seaweed or some homeopathy remedy, which actually works pretty well because it does nothing. And the body has an amazing ability to heal itself, and so when you get better, that's what gets the credit. So that drives much of alternative medicine. Much of conspiracy theory mongering is based on this sort of anecdotal thinking, connecting A to B. So let's look at that connection that I call patternicity. That is the tendency to find meaningful patterns in meaningless noise. That is connecting A to B and B to C, even if there's nothing there. But the problem is we make two types of errors when we make those connections. The type 1 error, or a false positive, is believing a pattern is real when it is not. That is finding a non-existent pattern. A type 2 error, or a false negative, is not believing a pattern is real when it is. It is not recognizing a real pattern. So picture yourself in the Paleolithic environment of our evolutionary adaptation, and you're a hominid walking along, and you hear a rustle in the grass. Is it a dangerous predator, or is it just the wind? Well, if you believe that the rustle in the grass is a dangerous predator, and it turns out it's just the wind, you've made a type 1 error. But no harm. You just become a little more vigilant, you're cautious, you move away. No big deal. On the other hand, if you believe that the rustle in the grass is just the wind, and it turns out it's a dangerous predator, you're lunch. And therefore, there's a high cost to making a type 2 error. So, I'm arguing that paternicities occur whenever the cost of making a type 1 error is less than the cost of making a type 2 error. That is, we have a pattern detection problem. That is, assessing the difference between a type 1 and a type 2 error is highly problematic, and it takes time. So the default position is just to assume that all patterns are real. You can't sit there calculating carefully and collecting more data, waiting to find out if it's the wind or if it's the dangerous predator, because you'll be lunch, again, if you've made the type 2 error. So we just assume that all rustles of the grass are predators and not the wind. And this is the evolution of patternicity, or the evolution of superstition or magical thinking. That is, it was a natural selection for the cognitive process of assuming that all patterns are real and that all patternicities represent real and important phenomena. And we're the descendants of the most successful patternicity primates. To this, I add a second concept that I call agenticity. That is the tendency to believe that the world is controlled by intentional agents, usually invisible, from the top down. Notice I said dangerous predator. That implies something. That implies intention and agency on the part of that pattern. That's not just any old pattern. That's a pattern that intends me harm. It's some sort of agent that I know wants me, and I know that he knows that I know, so he's being extra careful, so I'm being extra careful, and so on. Souls, spirits, ghosts, gods, demons, angels, aliens, intelligent designers, government conspiracists, and all manner of invisible agents with power and intention are believed to haunt our world and control our lives. I think agenticity is the basis of animism, and polytheism, and monotheism, and the belief in aliens. Think about the narrative arcs of most science fiction stories and narratives that people tell about their encounters with aliens. They're always coming from down on high, with moral messages for us. In the 50s, it was, be careful about those nuclear weapons, and in the 70s, it was, don't overpopulate your Earth, and in the 90s, it's, global warming is going to ruin the Earth. The aliens are always worrying us about things that we're worried about. So obviously we're imposing that, but the theme there is that somebody from up there who's more powerful and moral than us is going to come down and rescue us, do something for us. It really is what the intelligent designer is always portrayed as, when he's not portrayed as Yahweh. It's just some greater being capable of designing DNA and bacterial flagellum and things like that. I'd even say that much of our belief in government, able to rescue economies and fix economies, especially economies, is a form of this agenticity. We have this idea that guy on the left and those people on the right, well, maybe not the guy on the left, but people on the right are going to somehow come and save us, rescue us, fix us. In fact, I think the arguments are very similar to the kind you see with the intelligent design theorists. X is a problem. I can't think of how X can be solved privately, therefore X should be solved publicly. That's kind of our default argument that we make. This is a big debate going on down south these days with healthcare. Anyway, but that's a different subject. Conspiracy theories are very much patterns with agenticity built into them, where the Illuminati are running the economy. It isn't this complex adaptive system that ebbs and flows with business cycles that go up and down, sort of irrelevant to what we do. No, it's these 12 guys in London that are running the show. That's who's making the economy do what it does. Or actually, maybe this goes a long way to explaining the last 8 years. Anyway, or the whole 9/11 thing, right? That there has to be some kind of cognitive balance there between the size of the event and the size of the cause. There has to be some hidden, deep, secret agent behind that. Not just 19 Al-Qaeda members, nobodies living on the nooks and crannies of society. Kennedy couldn't have been assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. He was a loser. I mean, there has to be a balance there. Great man has to have a great assassinational cause behind it. Princess Diana, what was the cause of her death? Drunk driving, speeding, no seatbelt. It doesn't get any more mundane than that. No. Princess Diana, she was so cute and so popular. She had to have, some big, top, deep, secret agent behind that. It was the MI or the royal family or whoever wanted her dead. Same thing with the whole 9/11 thing. This is actually, in a scary way, from a recent conference I went to of the Holocaust so-called deniers, revisionists. They're still selling with great popularity the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion and Henry Ford's The International Jew. So you go from kind of light and fun conspiracy theories that are sort of entertaining to the much darker and deeper. That I think touches on something yet again still deeper. That is what I call folk politics. The intuitive sense that societies are extensions of the family. And the father, that's why we use words like the fatherland, the motherland, brotherhood, sisterhood, the nanny state. These are extensions of our evolved psychology. And that there's something sort of deep beneath that. And so this belief engine of patternicity and agenticity leads to a form of tribalism, I think supports tribalism, that leads to a type of xenophobia. So I want to switch here to a slightly different subject, a subject that's been on my mind that's concerning me, and that is political tribalism. So this is we're going to get a little serious here for a minute, then we'll come back out and have some more fun. That is the sort of left-right tribalism. This is, maybe it's more prominent in America, but I think it's still fairly prominent here. Maybe your right is more left than our right is, but still you get that division between left and right, blue states and red states. I mean, you all know the stereotypes of what liberals think about conservatives. The conservatives are a bunch of hard-drinking, gun-toting, Hummer-driving, Bible-thumping, black-and-white-thinking, fist-pounding, shoe-stomping, morally hypocritical blowhards. You know that's what you think of conservatives. But they have an opinion about you liberals, too. And here's what conservatives think of liberals. Because liberals are a bunch of tree-hugging, whale-saving, hybrid-driving, sandal-wearing, bottle-water-drinking, ACLU-supporting, flip-flopping, wishy-washy, namby-pamby bedwetters. This is what the liberals think conservatives see the world. I thought this would go over well here. So this is how liberals think conservatives see the world, and here's how conservatives think that liberals see the world. So tribalism is alive and well. Of course, we've all seen the map of the last election with McCain versus Obama and the blue and red states, and it does make it look like it's very tribal. But in reality, if you took any one of those, even in the middle of Kansas, any one of those little blocks, it's just barely more red than blue. And because it's just barely more, it just gets colored in as a solid block. But in fact, it would look more like something like that, purple America rather than Americans in black and white. And so I think a better way to think of that, instead of thinking as the tribes are right or wrong, the liberal tribe is right and the conservative tribe is wrong, or vice versa, I like Jonathan Haidt's moral foundation theory.